A craving for ice cream like I do? Take that craving to Scotland County Pharmacy in Memphis. They've got a walk-up window exclusively for serving you some of the best ice cream anywhere. Or come in for the old-time soda fountain and pick up your prescriptions inside or their drive-through window. They're offering free delivery to Memphis and Edina with free mailing service also, and $4 and $10 generic plans. Scotland County Pharmacy is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5:30, Saturdays from 9 to 1. Located next to Jay's Foods and the Daisy Patch in Memphis, Missouri.
Real country weather.
Hey, it'll be sunny today with a high near 62 degrees and winds out of the south at 10 all the way up to 20 miles an hour. Tonight, skies should be mostly clear with the low right around 25. Then tomorrow, it'll be mostly sunny and the high should be near 47. This is Healthy University, bringing health and vitality to you and your family. Brought to you by Scotland County Hospital in Memphis.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fear.
And now here's your host, Dr. Randy Tobler.
And good morning. Welcome to Healthy You here on a gorgeous, gorgeous day. First day after hunting season. Back on the show, right?
It's amazing.
Started. It's wonderful.
It's nice out there.
It is gorgeously beautiful. Did you get a deer, bud?
I did not hunt.
You didn't get a deer?
No.
You sound stuffy today. You have a cold?
I'm stuffy. I went on vacation and
Well, I don't mean you're stuffy.
Caught bubonic plague while I was there and brought it back home with me to serve it up to all my friends and family.
Well, I've got my garlic acidity bag. Is that what that's called? Did you ever hear about that? My dad talks about that, how his mom used to, or maybe it was his grandma,
His grandma
used to hang this thing of a concoction of like a garlic and weird stuff.
Yeah.
And allegedly the garlic would keep the evil spirits away. You know, I mean, the bacteria away.
Right.
And garlic is antibacterial, actually.
Yeah.
I think it was just it kept people away. You didn't want to be. I think there was like Limburger cheese and garlic. It's like
It was working really well for him, so he's
that's right. Hey, you walk around like little. Is it Linus in the Charlie Brown that's got the cloud? Yeah, yeah. No one. I mean, Linus probably never had an infection in his life. I don't know.
probably not.
Well, we hope you feel better, bud.
Yeah, we're getting there.
How's Miss Elisa this morning?
Fine, thank you for asking.
Elisa Kiger, producer of the program.
Wow, did you hear about this thing on, I saw a little bit about it on Google, and it's stem cells being used as a replacement for cardiac muscle.
Yeah.
And the thing that really was amazing to me was they're taking, I mean, you know, you think of stem cells coming from the bone marrow.
Right.
And other places, but
Embryonic stem cells, of course, those are all controversial, but yeah, there's a lot of sources.
It looked like from this story, and I don't know if this is right or not, they were taking it from the actual muscle, cardiac muscle itself. So it was cardiac stem cells. So then, what do they do next? They make sure they've got the good
Just the
cardiac
stem cells. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is isolating. You know, the reason that they were so enthusiastic about embryonic stem cells is because they're so easy, and almost all of the cells obviously are stem cells at some early stage because, you know, all but a few. So it's easier to isolate them. Well, the challenge is to find stem cells in adult tissue. And for a long time, they didn't think that there were those stem cells. What's a stem cell? A stem cell means a cell that is theoretically an undeveloped film.
Yeah.
A piece of what biblical model can we use? The piece of clay that is as yet unmolded.
Yeah.
And so it has the potential to become everything
That was good, Doctor.
at all.
Very
Wow.
good.
And so therefore what happens is that, you know, if they can then sort of help detour these cells into the tissue form that they want, bingo bango, you got ear cartilage, or you've got Parkinson's, replacement of that certain area in the brain, or cardiac.
But in this study, check it out, and this is one of the first studies that has been a little bit longer study. And of course, obviously, there's a lot more left to do yet with this. But from the expected 4% recovery ratio that is after open heart surgery and that sort of thing. This was up to 14%.
Yeah.
And I think they had 7 people in the group that had the replacement and 7 that didn't. Like would be like the placebo part of the program. But I think that's amazing. And this doctor said that was probably one of the most amazing things that he'll see in his lifetime that has to do with cardiology.
It's amazing. And what's interesting about this study and others that are emerging is that the real challenge with stem cell therapy has been to prevent that cell, which has the ability to reproduce rapidly and to reproduce uncontrollably in a direction that you don't want it to go. We call that cancer.
Yeah.
Is that these things can become cancers.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. So being able to sort of lasso them and get them to walk the straight and narrow line that we want them to walk, that's the challenge. And in this study, they've apparently have come a long way towards doing that.
Yeah. And I don't understand the logistics of it, because it sounds to me like they're withdrawing 1 or 2 cells and putting 1 million back in.
Well, I think what they do is they isolate the stem cells they want, and then they let them reproduce, and then they, as I say, they start them towards that tissue differentiation.
So they put them in the proverbial petri dish. And
and that's what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then they can infuse without any kind of rejection at all by the body, because
if it's the person's own cell. Yeah. But again, there's issues around cancer, and that's what the long-term concerns are, as well as differentiating into the proper channels. Now, the really cool thing about the stem cell research, other than this high-profile, regenerate an organ or help an organ regenerate, that's all exciting stuff. But like the space program, we all saw the man land on the moon, but we all used Teflon, and we all used transistors. And it's the basic research that, like spokes from a hub, come out from this, the holy grail.
Practicality.
That is what ultimately often drives 100 more advances.
Sure.
Things that you would have never even imagined. Because in biology, the very exciting thing that we learn about as biologists early on is how tissues signal one another, and how does that program unfold to take this cell that's basically a I can become anything cell to I want to become a back of the eye, a retina cell, or I'm going to become a neuron, or I'm going to become a kidney. How does that happen? And there's a lot of messaging and signaling and switching and turning off and on of various genes. That's the kind of challenges that you have to understand how that happens before you can program it and reprogram it. So that's what we're after.
Amazing stuff.
Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to direct the immune system someday as a result of this to avoid getting the cold that you got. Who knows?
I'll give it back. Take it.
Along those lines, and before we go to our special guest, and this is going to be exciting, folks, we're going to be talking with Mary, is it Lamia or Lamia? Lamia. Who is a psychoanalyst, a psychologist, and she's written an exciting book called Understanding Myself, a kid's guide to intense emotions and strong feelings. Now, we as parents never have to deal with those kind of things, right?
At all.
Kids just talk about a stem cell being programmed, just go right the way you want, always make the right decisions.
24 hours a day.
Never have any temper tantrums or anger management, never sass back to mom or dad, never bully anyone. Never feel depressed because they are bullied.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Never happens.
I don't know why she wrote the book. No. No, seriously, we're going to talk to her about that because that's really her focus. And what's really coolly, very exciting is that she's also a radio talk show host herself, and having done a show for over a decade on Radio Disney, right? So that'll be fun.
Cool.
So we will don our Mickey Mouse ears and talk with Mary after this. But just relating to your story, there's a story out about the overuse of antibiotics.
Yeah.
The CDC has launched an antibiotic tracking system so hospitals don't overuse those, or at least to monitor what kind of, utilization is going there as a tool to understand if we are and how to fix the overuse of antibiotics. Because if you overuse antibiotics, then you select out those feisty little bacteria. They become smart and they mutate, and suddenly they're resistant to what we want to treat them with.
Yes.
Too many antibiotics prescribed for kids as well. More than 10 million antibiotic prescriptions each year that likely won't do any good but might do harm are prescribed, according to study leader Adam Hirsch of the University of Utah at Salt Lake City. And this was based on about 65,000 outpatient visits by children under 18 few years ago. And then they finally get to publishing it now, but after they crunch all the
right
data.
after they get all of
One
that.
reason overuse occurs is because the diagnosis is often unclear. Does Bud have one of the colds that is caused by 95% of colds or more are due to
1948
are due to
H1N1.
virus, or do you have Legionnaire's disease that's going to ultimately kill you if we don't treat it?
Okay, let's treat it.
What it turns out is, as he says, antibiotics are wonderful. There are times when you really need them. The question is being judicious when we use them.
Right.
If the diagnosis is still a little unclear. Now, this is in your healthy young kid, okay?
Sure, your 8-year-old.
Ask if it would be safe to wait a day or two with close follow-up rather than starting the antibiotic right away.
Yeah.
And truly, I can tell you, doctors are under siege, particularly when people are paying a $30 copay. And, I want a prescription. Sometimes the best medicine is no medicine other than rest and chicken noodle soup and, getting some sleep.
Yeah.
And
that's a tough one.
And some over-the-counter remedies to take care of symptoms, maybe. But
because it enters into the customer satisfaction thing.
Right.
If they left and they didn't get something in their hand, they don't know how to act to that.
You're right. Hey, we're going to go to a break here, and we'll come back and talk with Mary Lamia, PhD and author of the new book, Understanding Myself, right after this.
Okay. We didn't have anything.
50% plus an extra 20% on fine jewelry. And get a triple buffet server for $19.99 after $10 mail-in rebate. Macy's biggest one-day sale. Savings off regular sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply. See store for details.
You may have noticed doctors and nurses using the Exergen temporal scanner thermometer in hospitals and clinics. That's because it gives a fast, accurate reading with just a gentle forehead scan, backed by more than 40 published medical studies. It's a huge time saver, which makes it a great money saver too. Now, what you may not have noticed is that doctors and nurses use the Exergen temporal scanner thermometer at home too, for all the same reasons. So why not get one for your home? Pick one up today at Walgreens and other fine retailers.
He came from somewhere back in how long ago. The sentimental fool don't see, trying hard to recreate what had yet to be created. Once in her life, she musters a smile for his nostalgic tale. Never coming near what he wanted to say, only to realize.
And we're back on Healthy University. 17 after the hour. And boy, I've been looking forward to talking with Mary Lamia all weekend. Since I heard last week that we're going to be talking with her.
She was going to be on.
Sitting in a deer stand, not seeing much, thinking about all the cool things we can talk about. And welcome to the program, Mary. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you, Dr. Tobler. It's great to talk with you.
And this book is so exciting. I was looking it over, Understanding Myself, A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions and Strong Feelings. And we were joking in the first segment about, I don't know why she wrote this book. My kids never had any temper problems or sassing back or feeling lonely or being bullied or on occasions bullying themselves. I don't know. That's not very common, is it, Mary? Just kidding.
Well, actually, I wrote the book because emotions are so normal and natural.
Yeah.
And it's interesting just how many parents think that it's about having those temper tantrums and intense emotions that you can't control, or shame or guilt or any of those things.
Yeah.
But in fact, emotions are part of our normal, everyday life, and they're so important for kids to understand and for adults to understand, too.
And I think that all of us struggle lifelong with managing our emotions.
Oh, yes, we do.
Because without emotions, life is blah.
Yeah.
Life is just, an empty chalkboard.
Yeah.
I think we realize it's a matter of tempering the emotions and using them to spice life and rather than to drive the way you live your life. And I guess that's what growing up is about, and that's what the book is really teaching parents how to help their kids, and actually teaching kids, because it's really written towards them, how to manage the emotions, right?
Well, so many people, and you've probably come across lots of them, want to rid themselves of their emotions or control their emotions or simply manage their emotions, and don't really understand that emotions are there to inform you. And if you could learn how to understand and learn how to listen to them, it really can help you improve your self-awareness, improve your social relationships, your decision-making, your self-control. Actually, if you learn to understand your emotions, you can achieve your goals more readily. It works.
And and I think you just said it. I mean, ultimately, I guess you have to step back and tell the child, hey, I want you to read this book because, you're going to have emotions. You're going to be challenged with, not overplaying your emotions or let them get the best of you. And if you do that, good things happen. It's not a matter of putting them in the back seat. It's a matter of being able to use them to your advantage. Let's talk about some of the things that are common. And you go through the various chapters. There's anxiety and fear and pride. Let's talk about, and I want to talk about this in relationship to an article I saw about, now these are older kids, okay? But there was an indictment on a lot of the Wall Street protesters the other day that I read in an article by an author there, an op-ed, and he said, these kids are what he called the trophy generation. The kids who were given self-esteem because they were just given stuff and the Nike Airs and all of the, the labeled clothes and the bling and everything. And self-esteem is a lot different than pride, isn't it?
Well, they're related, but one of the things you seem to be talking about here is distinguishing between self-esteem, pride, and narcissism.
Yes,
and
there you go.
A lot of talk about, are we leading kids to be more narcissistic? And I think when you say, trophy, you're alluding to that. And maybe in some ways we are. Actually, we see a lot less, people in my field anyway, see a lot less neuroses in our practices and a lot more personality disorders. And narcissism falls under personality disorders.
Yeah.
So why is that? And if that is true, why is that? Well, I think if we were going to boil it down, it would come right down to what happened to guilt. And there's a Psychology Today blog I wrote. This emotions book for children translates into a Psychology Today blog for adults that I do. and this particular article happened to be on whatever happened to guilt. Because, psychologists have worked so hard to relieve people of guilt and all of its symptoms and manifestations that what has happened is that people don't feel guilty anymore.
Yeah.
So they are able to do a lot of things. In earlier generations, if the Internet existed and you could watch porn, you would feel horribly guilty if you saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's acceptable. Now a lot of behaviors are acceptable that in previous times were completely unacceptable. And so, whether it's sexual behavior or drinking and drug use, etc., kids see their parents do it, and so it's acceptable to them for those reasons too. Well, if you don't have guilt and you don't have a conscience that stops you, that prohibits you, you are more likely to be narcissistic and self-centered, because guilt is an emotion that alerts us to not engage in activities that might breach a social bond or not do something to hurt somebody else. But if you're self-centered, you don't care.
Well, you talk about the difference between guilt and shame. And I'm having a hard time. I mean, as I read through the chapter, I get it. But at first, I didn't think, well, I don't know. Is there much of a difference there? Tell us about that. What does that mean? And how are kids supposed to manage that?
It's a good question because most people don't understand the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt has to do with social relationship and hurting somebody else. And you feel, when guilt is triggered, you feel terrible about what you've done and you want to make amends somehow. Shame is a little bit different. It's also a self-conscious emotion, but shame informs you of like an internal state of inadequacy or unworthiness or dishonor. So where guilt is about the deed you did wrong, shame doesn't separate you from the deed. With shame, you
Okay, so that gets at a core problem that I think we all struggle with, but especially children. In other words, if I make a C on the test, but I normally make A's, it's okay for the teacher to say, you did a bad test, but it's not okay for me to say I'm a bad person because I got a C.
Exactly. Rather than say, oh, I feel really guilty because I could have studied harder, or my mom told me to study harder and I didn't, so now I feel guilty. Shame makes you feel like you are despicable and a horrible person because you did this.
Well, let's take the test analogy and go to a different emotion, pride. What about the kid who's always getting the A's and is the first string quarterback on the team and on the honor society, and they walk into school and they're flipping their hair and going, hey, they got that swagger in their stuff. Well, I mean, I guess now we're down to the difference between maybe confidence and pride, or what? How does, what's that all about?
Pride is a wonderful emotion, and it's, again, one of the self-conscious emotion, and pride ignites a positive appraisal of the self. And if you want to be addicted to anything, you want to be addicted to pride, because once you feel a sense of pride about something, you want more of it. And just in evolutionary terms, the expression of pride informs others of your value. So you can imagine in evolutionary terms how it was probably it's a good thing. It makes you worthy and valuable, and it shows in your facial expression and in your posture. Self-esteem has more of a general attitude about yourself. Pride is an emotion that's triggered because of a specific deed that you've done, or a specific thing that you've done. So you got an A on this test. So, just the way pride makes you feel makes you want to do it again. And so people who have pride in their accomplishments and their achievements tend to be more competitive generally because they want more of that good feeling.
We're talking with Mary Lamia, PhD, and clinical psychologist and psychoanalyst and author, radio talk show host, blogger, and fantastic book here, folks, because those of you who struggle with parenting, and I don't know anyone who doesn't,
Right.
It's called Understanding Myself, a kid's guide to intense emotions and strong feelings. It's well written. It respects the kids' sensibilities to where I don't think it in any way, shape, or form, like so many kids' books, Mary, are you talking sort of at the kids, you're talking with them. And I think it's really a cool approach. You've got quotes from various, here, we were talking about pride. Here's a little quote from Amber. I used to be the most popular girl in my grade. I admit that I wasn't nice to people in my group, and they were all trying to be my best friend. I acted like I didn't care and would even talk bad about one friend to another. It made everyone want to be my friend. That's a misuse of the pride thing there.
Indeed.
It's a misuse of the pride thing.
And a parent...
It's more about control, and people can control when they feel very proud and very competitive, too. And you see that in business leaders. And, we won't go down that road. But I did want to mention that all of the quotes in the book are real quotes from kids that were taken from the Radio Disney talk show I did for 9 years. And I couldn't possibly make those up. What kids say, is so amazing and unique. But there is a book for adolescents that's coming out this fall from the American Psychological Association, based also on this kid's book. So many parents of adolescents wanted a book for them, so I thought, okay, that's next.
How does a parent step in for if a parent is observing a very prideful child that acted like Amber in that quote? How does a parent step in and be the adult here? How does a parent step in and mold the child into a different personality? I know that's a big question. How do we mold our children into different personalities? But what is your practical advice for a parent to step in when they start seeing pride really stepping in and maybe alienating friends with your children? What's a practical step for parents to see and do?
Well, it's interesting when a children expresses that kind of overconfidence that makes them very competitive and actually makes them make risky decisions as well, and very, very competitive rather than cooperative. It's difficult for a parent to alter that. Usually what alters it is when other kids, friends get together and say, we don't like your behavior. That's what makes a child change when they do that. Unfortunately, a lot of that kind of behavior on the part of a child is based on the parent needing the child to be number one.
Right. I understand that completely. I appreciate the parenting philosophy. Preach your morals and values and occasionally use words. You know, I think that's probably what you're talking about here, where it comes from probably from the parent, and I appreciate that.
So where a parent needs a child to be most popular, sometimes that
for the parent
translates into an arrogant child. Although, in some cases, I've certainly seen kids who are exactly this way, and what they're doing is they're hiding shame. For example, a girl who was behaving in this very way that Amber speaks to felt a lot of shame about being held back in school. And so she needed to conceal her shame about not being good enough. And so instead, because she was very, very bright and the brightest in her class, used that to control and manipulate friends and be the most popular and be popular with boys in 7th and 8th grade. And it was really, really destructive, actually, but she was just hiding shame.
Yeah, overcompensating. Yeah. We're going to continue the conversation if you can stay with us, Dr. Lamia.
Right.
Great. Mary Lamia, PhD, and author and psychoanalyst, psychologist. I guess, are you a psychotherapist too? Would that be fair? Yeah.
I'm a psychologist and a psychoanalyst. Yes, I'm a psychotherapist.
Okay. Well, I guess, psychotherapy is the umbrella, and then there are different forms of that. All right. Understanding Myself, A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions and Strong Feelings. I have an admission to make, Mary. I've learned a lot from reading your book about how to manage my own issues. You've never had an adult tell you that, have you?
I have, actually.
Well,
I have. That's why I started writing the Psychology Today blog, because adults were enjoying the book as much as kids.
That's right. I mean, I'm looking at the one on anger here, and it's like, okay, when you get angry, step back. That's the old count to 10 moment.
Away.
Walk away.
So anger's a good emotion, too.
Well, I mean, Jesus was angry in the temple. I mean, so
there you go.
It's got to be used righteously and at the right moment, only for the right purpose, but that's for another show. Along with Bud Wilson, the co-host, and Elisa Kiger, our producer, I'm Randy Tobler, and you are listening to Healthy University with our special guest, Mary Lamia. Hey, if you'd like to give us a buzz and ask a question, maybe she would field that for you. What are the numbers, Bud?
1-800-748-7875 and 660-465-7225.
Back in a minute.
Without any pride, I've given up on schemes, 'cause everyone fell through. I've given up so many things. Don't ask me to give on you. And baby, just once in my life.
Have you got a craving for ice cream like I do? Take that craving to Scotland County Pharmacy in Memphis. They've got a walk-up window exclusively for serving you some of the best ice cream anywhere. Or come in for the old-time soda fountain and pick up your prescriptions inside or their drive-through window. They're offering free delivery to Memphis and Edina with free mailing service also, and $4 and $10 generic plans. Scotland County Pharmacy is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5:30, Saturdays from 9 to 1. Located next to Jay's Foods and the Daisy Patch in Memphis, Missouri.
Aunt Faye's Diner at the junction of Highway 15 and 136 will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until the last person is served daily. Enjoy home-style meals, hot beef plates all day, or menu items. They also have nightly supper specials including all-you-can-eat chicken or catfish fillets, meatloaf on Monday, glazed chicken on Tuesday, good old-fashioned beef and noodles or chicken and noodles on Wednesday, Thursday is smothered pork chops, and Friday is barbecue country-style ribs, with Saturday being corned beef. That's Aunt Faye's Diner. Call them at 660-465-7577.
Oh, Sunday morning, don't you know? Lots of body just oozing life. And someone sneaking around the corner. Could that be our boy?
And we're back,
Mac the Knife?
25 till the hour, and we're inviting your phone calls here with Dr. Mary Lamia, author of the new book, Understanding Myself, A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions and Strong Feelings. And we're so glad you can spend the time with us, Mary. This is just a delightful and very important discussion, of course. I want to talk about a lot of the negativity and the negative circumstances our children find themselves in. Sometimes their parents are unemployed, losing their house, perhaps, or threatened. Lots of economic woes, not to mention the cultural chaos that kids find themselves in with social networking and all of the just too many opportunities to go all the wrong places, wrong messages that they're hearing. And I know in my practice as an OBGYN, I see a lot, and I listen to a lot of women lament the fact that their kids are depressed, they're lonely, they're gloomy. There are studies around that show when the family has problems, the kids share in that, even though they may not share it overtly with mom and dad. And of course, we all worry. We hear about kids harming themselves, the self-mutilation, the cutting kids do, other things. And of course, the worst, the most grave outcome, suicide, which appears to be on the rise. What can you tell us, and what's in the book about that to help kids? And what should parents know to get kids to some professional help when it's more than just a gloomy day?
Good question. Well, this book is organized around normal emotions that kids feel, and it's when emotions are disordered or when a child cannot make sense of his or her emotions that things go awry. And so loneliness and sadness and even grief are some of those where children are triggered, and if they don't know how their emotion is informing them or what their emotion is telling them, sometimes they can go down a road that's very dangerous and destructive. Even grief. Let's just take one at a time here. Grief, for example, if you've lost your family home due to economic circumstances, whenever you drive by that neighborhood, you're going to get triggered, and you're going to feel a sense of loss, grief. And people think that they should get over grief, and that's not true. Grief is lifelong, because if you have a grief trigger, a reminder, the holidays might remind you of losing your grandmother or a parent, or losing your home. That grief is going to get triggered again in the form of like an anniversary reaction or a date matching reaction or just a general trigger. People don't get over grief. You don't just go through stages and get over it. And that's what makes people upset, and they get depressed thinking there must be something wrong with me because I shouldn't be feeling this sense of loss now because that happened so long ago, or it happened a year ago, or in a kid's life, a year can be a long time or a short time, depending upon the circumstance. Just understanding that you don't necessarily get over grief, that grief triggers happen, and you feel the loss all over again, maybe not so intensely, but you feel it, can help you, when that happens to you, so you don't get depressed.
What can we do, doctor, to help our children when we see circumstances like this happening?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
What can we do to help children when we see circumstances like that taking place and are able to, identify it?
What can we do to help the parents deal when they see these kind of things?
To validate that it's fine to feel sad. Mm-hmm. We're driving by the neighborhood where we used to own a house, and we don't anymore. We're living in a little apartment. And to be the model for that, I have some sad feelings because I miss our house, but I'm so happy that we have each other. Mm. That kind of thing. Yeah.
And I noticed, too, that in your answer there about sort of understanding it's normal and not internalizing it to your very core, that there's something wrong with you to feel this, that relates to the discussion we had about making a mistake.
Right.
Exactly.
This seems to be a recurring theme. I mean, even on the good side of things, if you hit the home run, the walk-off homer in the bottom of the ninth, that doesn't mean that you are a supernatural being. That means you hit a walk-off homer in the bottom of the ninth.
It is what it is.
Exactly. To put an emotion in perspective is very important. I saw a woman once who every June would get horribly depressed. And so one of those Junes, she came to see me and was talking about her deep depression. Now, there's a lot of people who would have sent her to get medication, and that would have been a mistake. Emotions happen for a reason. So when we explored it a little bit, turns out her son died many years before in June. And of course, every June, she's depressed and sad and almost suicidal. And so just understanding that her emotion is reminding her of her son. Her grief is being triggered because she's being reminded. The emotion of grief tells her to remember rather than forget. And so the trick is to remember, to think about it rather than try to push it aside.
And I guess the ultimate expression of managing it and validating it in the positive way is to remember and cherish, right? I mean, that's the next step along that road.
That's exactly what to do. To think about the person you lost or the home you lost or the money you lost, whatever it is, and to think about the good things and to think about what you want and to think about what you learned and to turn it into information, because emotions exist to give us information.
You know, the subtitle of the book is A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions and Strong Feelings. Mm-hmm. And as you think about it, I mean, I think a lot of us sort of just think of the word emotions and feelings as interchangeable synonyms, right?
Yeah.
But there's a difference. What is the difference between intense emotions and strong feelings?
I'm so glad you asked that question. That's very, very important, because emotions are triggered in our brain, but feelings are in our body. There's a big difference between emotions and feelings. So when you think about it, your brain sizes up a situation and sends an alert to you in the form of triggering an emotion. And that emotion in your brain affects your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, one or the other, and that's what creates feelings in your body. And then those feelings create certain thoughts in your mind. In order to accommodate the feelings, you have all of these thoughts. And all of that goes along with making decisions and taking action. And this happens instantly, before you know it, and unconsciously. So emotions are in your brain, feelings are in your body, thoughts are in your mind, and they're all interconnected, but they're different.
And Dr. Lamia, you know, I hear you talking about these things, and we are all adults sitting in the room. And
well, wait a minute.
Okay.
Bud's here.
I know.
That's okay.
I use that term loosely.
We love Bud.
And so I use that term loosely. But, you know, Dr. Lamia, we are all adults, and think about how angry or gloomy or happy or sad that we as adults get, and we have the maturity to be able to level out those emotions, because, okay, Bud's like marginal on that one, but we have the maturity, or we're supposed to have the maturity at your age, Buddy Charles, to level out those emotions. And so as kids, you know, they don't have that maturity level. And so I go back to, again, you know, practical steps that we as parents can use to kind of practice what we preach to our kids. It is so tough for us to keep our emotions in tune. So how do we, you know, how do we exhibit those to our children so that, you know, a happy mom, you know, raises happy kids kind of things. If mom is depressed, then, you know, that's obviously going to, you know, trickle down to the children. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of correlation here. Like Dr. Tobler said, he learned a lot about himself in the book.
Very, very important question. And, you know, you're actually asking a couple of different questions, if not several. One has to do with a child recognizing emotions in a parent. The other has to do with how can a parent help a child understand his or her own emotions. And let's go to the second one first, which is, you reminded me of a mother who asked me, what do I do? Often my child is screaming into his hands, and he says he's just venting his stress. Now, that's probably not a good idea, because venting only stirs up the emotional brain. It doesn't calm it down. It never works. So don't tell a kid to hit a pillow or, kick a bed or anything like that. It just doesn't work. So what do you do with a kid who feels an intense emotion, or an intense emotion gets triggered? He gets angry and starts screaming. How do you deal with that? Well, the first thing you do is try to help the child identify the emotion. What is it he's experiencing? And to name that emotion. And you can see in the book on each chapter, for example, in the chapter of anger, there's all kinds of anger-related words, ways in which you could identify anger. So to help the child identify what it is he's feeling and how it makes him feel, what it makes him feel he wants to do. Because, for example, anger makes you feel hot and tense, and it makes you want to lash out. That's what anger does, because it's triggered in order to help you protect yourself in some way. And so what are you protecting yourself from? So just talk it through. And the next time the child feels angry, if he can talk himself through it in the same way. I'm feeling hot and tense, and I feel as though I want to lash out, and I'm thinking really negatively because I am angry. And I'm angry because this person called me a name, and I feel as though I'm not good enough, or he doesn't like me, or whatever it is. I'm frustrated because my blocks fell. But to help a kid learn how to identify the emotion helps them learn how to manage it and understand it. The other question you're asking has to do with a parent feeling intense emotions and that's showing on your face. Paul Ekman, the psychologist, has demonstrated that certain emotions have universal facial expressions across cultures. So the look of anger or shame or guilt or even loneliness or jealousy shows up on a person's face. What happens to a child when they read a parent's face, even if the parent doesn't say anything?
Indeed.
Children read our faces.
And nonverbals, let's just face it, speak way louder than our verbals.
Absolutely. And also they read our voice.
Indeed.
Parents are always complaining that when they're on the telephone, their children act up. Well, children act up when you're on the telephone because people's voice tends to change when they're on the phone. And they tend to be a little bit more intense, and the child will respond to that auditory cue of intensity and start acting out. They'll play out the parent's emotion that's expressed on the phone, and a parent needs to understand that. So kids are like little receptacles for a parent's emotions.
They are.
So it's very important to pay attention to your own emotions, talk yourself through them so you don't impose them on your child. And your child can walk in the door, look at your face, and know exactly what you feel. But they can't really interpret it very well, so they put their own interpretation on it, which is usually self-referent. I did something wrong, so my mommy looks depressed or sad or angry. It has nothing to do with the salesperson, or it has nothing to do with anybody else. It has to do with me. That's why smiling is so important. We have mirror neurons in our brain that reflect the emotions of other people, especially our parents or people we're really connected with. We read their facial expressions. Our brain processes it through mirror neurons, and we feel the feeling. Haven't you ever been around somebody who's gloomy or depressed, and all of a sudden you feel like there's this weight on your shoulders? You're empathically picking that up, and kids do that all the time. Smiling at a kid evokes a smiling response in them. And so if you smile at a child, they smile back. Little babies do that all the time, and people have fun evoking a smile response. response from a baby. Smiling's important. Being happy.
We're talking.
Tobler's going to walk around all day long with a smile on his face and make
He
everybody
does.
happy.
He already does.
I walk around humming.
He does.
People say, "Why are you humming?" I said, "Because if you whistle a happy tune, it makes you happy."
Happy. There you go.
Yeah.
Happy
There you go.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. Can you spend another 5 minutes with us because we're about
Sure.
done with the show, but we're just I'm just chock full of questions, and we have the best of the best, Mary Lamia, PhD and author of the book Understanding Myself: A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions and Strong Feelings. My recommendation is pick up a copy, read it. Don't make it look red, but read it. And then give it to your child for Christmas, maybe.
Good idea.
Be a good thing to do. I mean, rather than chicken soup for whatever this.
And I think that's what's
is a
happening.
book. This is a book that gets to the heart of what gets to the heart and the soul of kids.
Yeah.
And I would commend it to your reading. It's great. And we're going to have to hit you up for an appearance when you write the adolescent book. How's that, Mary?
Oh, I would be happy.
Oh, I
to.
can't wait,
Come
'cause-
out in October or so.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we'll look forward to that.
But you can go to my Psychology Today blogs if you're an adult, and you could have a lot of fun with them.
Hey, that'll be fun.
And actually, probably the best way to link to them is to go to my website, marylamia.com, Lamia, and there's a little link right on the homepage where you can go to the Psychology Today blogs and read about sad love or the secret emotion of envy.
Okay.
Those things.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about that secret emotion of envy, because I'd like to notice when kids see that someone else has the Nike Airs and I've got the Walmart specials, what do I do with that one? We'll be back with Mary Lamia after this. Stay tuned. Lots more coming up.
Have you got a craving for ice cream like I do? Take that craving to Scotland County Pharmacy in Memphis. They've got a walk-up window exclusively for serving you some of the best ice cream anywhere. Or come in for the old-time soda fountain and pick up your prescriptions inside or their drive-through window. They're offering free delivery to Memphis and Edina with free mailing service also, and $4 and $10 generic plans. Scotland County Pharmacy is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5:30, Saturdays from 9 to 1. Located next to Jay's Foods and the Daisy Patch in Memphis, Missouri.
Is your lawnmower having problems? Call Coatesville Custom Mowers Sales and Service in Coatesville, Missouri. They specialize in rebuilding and small engine repair. Dale has a lot of parts in stock, so there's no waiting on parts. From air filters to zip ties, any parts available. Pickup and delivery in a 50-mile radius is only $20. Customer service satisfaction is his #1 priority. So give Coatesville Custom Mowers a call, 660-553-4025.
Whoa, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. Hang on. Let's stop that. Sorry, Mary, little technical thing. But you know you're a radio talk show.
Welcome to our world.
You know, the Christmas season's coming up, and inevitably, boy, that always sets the stage for...
I want.
Yeah, he got the Tonka truck with the big yellow bulldozer, and I just got a G.I. Joe, and I want, oh my gosh, it's one after another. And, of course, it can take more serious forms. The one I more commonly see is in the schools. I mean, we went through with our kids. No, you're not getting the label on every apparel that you have that everyone else has, Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. How do you teach little ones to deal with those thoughts of I want what he wants or what she wants?
You know what? You did a good thing for your kids, because what you're saying is you don't need that label in order to be a good person. And sometimes parents get caught up in that too, and what the message they're giving to their kids is, yes, you have to have that in order to be popular, because you're not good enough just as you are.
And that's a tough one, because the marketing, I mean, you just look at all the studies on even marketing of cereals to the Saturday morning commercials. I mean, how much have we read about that really determines what kids want, and it's tough.
And the parents
in evolutionary terms, think about envy. The envied quality gives the person who has it some advantage or power. And in evolutionary terms, it allows the person who is the envier to step back And if you're a caveman, you might defer to the envied other, or eliminate him in some way, hit him over the head with a rock, or and some variation of that exists these days, I guess.
And the parent, don't you believe the parents of this generation perhaps get caught in the peer pressure? Do you want to be the parent? Are you strong enough to be the parent that is not going to give your third grader a cell phone or an iPad or one of those, new this box or that box? Can you be the parent that's strong enough to, be the example for your child? So I think it comes down to some of the parents of this generation.
Right, and if the parent is envious and believes there's this social ladder that they have to climb, they don't separate themselves from their child.
Mm-hmm.
So if the teacher said your child got a C on the test and should have gotten an A, the parent feels shamed as though they are bad or they're a bad parent, rather than maybe a little bit guilty that they didn't supervise their child studying or something else.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to separate yourself from the child. Otherwise, you're in that envy and competition with them.
Right. So somebody has to be the adult here. And that's not you, Buddy Charles.
Somebody has to be the adult. And we all have trouble doing that from time to time.
We do. We are small little people that grew up into adults. So we know what that feels like. So, yeah, you're right.
And when we're secretly feeling sort of inferior ourselves, it's easy to feel unhappy about the success of somebody else as though it takes it away from you, but it doesn't. And that's where people can take a look at their envy and say to themselves, what are the values against, which myself is measured? What are my ideals, and how do I meet my ideals? Rather than measure yourself against somebody else, you're really measuring yourself against your own ideals.
Dr. Mary, I had a question for you. How do we help our kids to recognize feelings that they have, such as a lump in the throat, burning in the chest, or butterflies in the stomach? What are the questions we can ask to help them identify what's going on?
And we only have about a minute left.
Okay, really fast. When you think about all the crushes that happen with kids, it's very important not to get so immersed in the crush itself, but to ask the kid questions like, what qualities does that person have that you like? Mm-hmm. And did you ever wish you had those qualities yourself? And what would it be like if you were admired by somebody in that way? And would you have to do anything in order to admire yourself more? To point it toward the child and help the child be a better person.
Dr. Mary, we are all shaking our heads. We just think that's, you've just really hit the nail on the head with your book here for our listening audience and their children.
And thanks for being with us. We're going to look forward to the book on adolescence coming out next year, and then after that, maybe the adult book that we'll really be looking forward to.
Yeah, you can interview Dr. Tobler for that one.
After the adolescent book is called The Highly Successful Procrastinator.
Oh, I don't have that problem. Yeah, okay. Dr. Mary Lamia, thanks for being with us again, folks. The book is Understanding Myself, A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions and Strong Feelings. You have hit it out of the park, so you were allowed to have lots of pride, Mary. You are something else.
Indeed,
you were so sweet. It was so nice talking to you all.
And have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
All righty. Well, it looks like that's going to do it for another show. Wow.
Yeah.
Flew by. Lots of practical information. It's a fantastic book, and I hope you guys will pick it up. Understanding Myself, A Kid's Guide to Intense Emotions, Strong Feelings, and the website is marylamia, LAMIA.com. For Lisa, for Bud Wilson, I am Dr. Randy Tobler, thanking you for being with us on this edition of Healthy University. We'll see you again next week. Remember this week, be well, share it with someone you love, be careful up in those deer stands.
Doctor, my eyes, tell me what is wrong. Was I unwise to leave them open for so long?
You've been listening to Healthy You. Learn more about Scotland County Hospital's services and facilities at www.scotlandcountyhospital.com or call 660-465-8511.
I've been waiting to awaken from these dreams. People go just where they will. I never knew.
Serving Unionville, Lancaster, Memphis, and Cahokia, this is 100.5 KMEM FM, Memphis, Missouri. Our time is 11 a.m. We have what you want to hear. Don't go away.
We had to anticipate. We have to
Yep,
get that
it's
legal
called,
ID at the top of the hour.
it's,
else the FCC.
right here.
But
We got
since
it through
10
Amazon.
seconds had played,
And it's